I don't believe anybody's good or bad. She's definitely flawed. She's definitely damaged. But she was very complex, and it was exciting to be able to play somebody with so many layers. Because on the page she could seem bad, but once you understand her humanity and her emotions, then who's the bad?
Blake Lively just got handed one of Hollywood's most embarrassing awards. And no, this isn't the kind of recognition any celebrity wants. The Hollywood Reporter just named Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni two of the biggest losers of 2025. But here's what makes this truly remarkable. Only one of them has the power to end this disaster right now. Only one of them can walk away, and she's choosing not to. If you care about how power, reputation, and legal manipulation actually work in Hollywood, hit that subscribe button now. Because what's unfolding in this case reveals everything the industry doesn't want you to see. Think about this for a moment. Justin Baldoni is locked into a legal battle he cannot escape. As the defendant, he's trapped on a moving train with no exit. He can file motions, he can defend himself, but he cannot simply walk away. Blake Lively, on the other hand, holds all the cards. She's the plaintiff. She filed this lawsuit. She could request dismissal tomorrow if she wanted to. She could end this entire spectacle. But instead, 1 year after her explosive New York Times story dominated headlines, she's still pushing forward. That choice tells us everything we need to know about what this case is really about. The Hollywood Reporter didn't pull punches in their assessment. They described the situation as mutually assured destruction, a social and legal death spiral where everyone caught in their orbit ends up looking worse. Nobody gains anything except lawyers, and those of us watching the drama unfold. The article even revealed that Colleen Hoover, the author of It Ends With Us, now says she's embarrassed by her own book because of this mess. Let that sink in. The author who created the source material is distancing herself from the project entirely because of what this feud has become. Here's the reality: neither Blake nor Justin has starred in anything significant since this film wrapped. Blake appeared in A Simple Favor 2, though reports suggest her actual screen time was minimal. Justin hasn't been seen in any major projects either, though admittedly his career trajectory was different. He was primarily known for television work, and this film represented a significant theatrical opportunity for him. But Blake, she built a career in film. She had momentum, connections, power, and now she hasn't been cast in anything beyond projects from her own production company. That's not a coincidence. That's Hollywood sending a message. Industry insiders suggest there's a reluctance to work with her. Blake might argue she's avoiding work because of the lawsuit, but that explanation doesn't hold up. If opportunities existed, she would take them. The absence of offers tells the real story. This is what a fall from grace looks like in real time. 1 year ago, Blake was positioned as the triumphant victim, with her story plastered across the front page of the New York Times. The narrative was clear. Everyone had gotten it wrong about Blake. She was the one who had been wrong. But 12 months later, that narrative has completely collapsed. Now the consensus is shifting. Blake is being called a liar, and this entire situation is being dismissed as a stupid, pointless feud. Ask yourself this: how does someone go from media darling to industry pariah in just 1 year? The answer is being written right now in court filings. And what just dropped is devastating. Wayfarer Studios, Justin Baldoni's production company, just filed a response that exposes what Blake's legal team has actually been doing. This isn't about sexual harassment. This isn't about workplace misconduct. This is about reputation management disguised as litigation. And the evidence just became public. Blake's attorneys filed yet another motion seeking sanctions against Wayfarer's legal team, claiming inappropriate behavior during a deposition. They leaked this story to the media, suggesting that Wayfarer's lawyers were asking invasive questions about Blake's sexual history. Variety ran with it. The New York Times picked it up. The headlines were inflammatory and damaging. Justin Baldoni's lawyer's deposition behavior. Questions about her sex history should be off limits. Another read: Blake Lively's lawyers blast Justin Baldoni's team over probing her sex life in disruptive depositions. But here's what actually happened. Wayfarer's legal team just unsealed the full deposition transcript and filed it with the court. Not excerpts, not carefully selected portions. The entire transcript. And it tells a completely different story. The deposition in question involved a woman named Miss Alexander, an expert in digital ecosystems. She was designated by Wayfarer to analyze whether the negative social media activity surrounding Blake from August 2024 through February 2025 was caused by a coordinated manipulation campaign, as Blake alleges, or whether it was the result of organic public engagement and normal entertainment industry media cycles. This is a critical question in the case. If Blake's team can prove a coordinated smear campaign, they have a case. If they can't, this lawsuit falls apart. Miss Alexander was deposed for 7 hours by Blake's attorney, Meyer Giver, and according to the transcript, things did not go well, but not for the reasons Blake's team claimed. Wayfarer's response to the court includes a footnote that destroys the entire media narrative. It states plainly, Miss Alexander's deposition had nothing to do with Miss Lively's sexual or romantic history. The questions at issue pertain to Miss Lively's reputation, which she herself put at issue by filing this lawsuit. Remember that earlier point about framing? This is why it matters. Blake's team took questions about her public reputation and reframed them as invasive questions about her sex life. Then they sent that false narrative directly to the media. Wayfarer's filing argues that the motion was filed solely to generate inflammatory headlines and falsely smear the character of their attorneys. This wasn't about getting relief from the court. This was about controlling the public narrative. And it worked, at least temporarily. But now we have the receipts. The full transcript reveals what actually happened during that deposition. Meyer Giver, Blake's attorney, wasn't getting the answers she wanted. She was interrupting the witness repeatedly. She was having disputes with opposing counsel. Every time something didn't go her way, she threatened to run to the judge. She was frequently interrupting Miss Alexander, preventing her from completing answers. The transcript shows a pattern of aggressive, disruptive behavior, and it wasn't coming from Wayfarer's team. Here's where it gets even more revealing. The deposition transcript shows that Giver didn't follow basic procedural rules. At the start of a deposition, it's standard practice to instruct the witness that if they don't understand a question, they should say so, and the attorney will rephrase it. Giver never gave that instruction. She also failed to inform Miss Alexander that she could request breaks during the 7-hour deposition. When Wayfarer's counsel suggested a break after 2 hours of questioning so the witness and stenographer could rest, Giver refused. She claimed there was a pending question that needed to be answered first. The stenographer later confirmed no question had been pending. Giver simply didn't want to allow a break. There's a moment in the transcript that's particularly telling. Giver was questioning Miss Alexander about an expert report, and she claimed she had never received an amended version of the report. She stated this on the record, suggesting Wayfarer's team had failed to provide required documents. But then the transcript shows the truth. The amended report had been served on her team a month earlier. Giver simply wasn't aware her own team had received it. When this was pointed out, she had to backtrack. That's not a minor oversight. That's a misrepresentation to the court, even if unintentional. But the most damaging revelation involves something called speaking objections. In a deposition, when an attorney objects to a question or instructs a witness not to answer based on privilege, that should be the end of it. The deposing attorney notes the objection and moves on, or they can challenge it later through a motion to the court. What you don't do is debate the issue on the record during the deposition itself. But that's exactly what Giver did. She repeatedly demanded that Wayfarer's attorney, Kevin Fritz, explain his basis for asserting attorney-client privilege. She debated him on the record, creating hostile exchanges that turned the deposition into a courtroom argument rather than a fact-finding session. At one point, Brian Friedman, another attorney on Wayfarer's team, interjected and told Giver to stop with his speaking objections. Giver responded by demanding that Friedman be muted because he hadn't entered an appearance in the case. But here's the irony. The transcript shows that Giver was the one engaging in speaking objections. She was the one turning the deposition into a debate. She was the one violating procedural norms. And when called out on it, she threatened to seek relief from the court. This wasn't accidental. This was calculated. Wayfarer's response argues that Giver violated federal rules of civil procedure by failing to meet and confer with opposing counsel after the deposition to resolve disputes. There's a court rule that requires attorneys to attempt to resolve discovery disputes before filing motions. Giver didn't do that. She didn't reach out during the deposition breaks. She didn't contact them afterward. She went straight to the judge with a sanctions motion and straight to the media with inflammatory accusations. Think about what that sequence reveals. This wasn't about protecting Blake during a deposition. This was about generating headlines. The motion cites cases where attorneys deliberately violated repeated court orders or engaged in prolonged, unnecessary arguments. But Giver doesn't allege Wayfarer's attorneys did any of those things. She presents only 35 pages from a multi-hour deposition transcript, a mere 10% of the total. Wayfair responded by filing the entire transcript so the judge could see the full context. That's confidence. That's what you do when you know the full record supports your position. Wayfair's filing ends with a statement that cuts to the heart of this entire case. The only ongoing pattern is Miss Lively's use of the media to disparage others and to distract the public from the legal issues at hand. That's not a legal argument. That's an accusation of bad faith, and it's supported by the evidence they just filed. There's another detail buried in Wayfair's response that's easily overlooked but critically important. They cite examples of improper speaking objections made by Blake's attorney, Ezra Hudson, during the deposition of non-party Jenny Slate. That transcript is currently sealed, so we can't see what Hudson said or did during that deposition. But Wayfair felt confident enough to reference it as an example of what actual improper conduct looks like. That suggests there's more problematic behavior from Blake's legal team documented in sealed filings. And if the pattern continues, those transcripts may eventually become public too. Here's what all of this means in practical terms. Blake filed a lawsuit claiming she was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. To prove that, she needs to show that negative public sentiment toward her was artificially created rather than organically generated. Miss Alexander, the digital ecosystem expert, was deposed specifically to address that question. If her testimony undermines Blake's theory of the case, Blake's entire lawsuit collapses. So, when Giverk couldn't get the answers she needed during that deposition, what did she do? She manufactured a controversy about deposition conduct, leaked it to the media, and tried to distract from the substance of what was actually discussed. That's not litigation. That's reputation management. And the judge is now fully aware of it. Wayfair's filing explicitly states that Blake's motion was designed to launder a false narrative to the media. They're not just defending their conduct. They're accusing Blake's team of abusing the court system to generate publicity. That's a serious allegation, and it's backed by a complete transcript that anyone can now review. The judge in this case has already made clear he won't tolerate misuse of the docket. Earlier in the litigation, he warned against using court filings for public relations purposes, and now Blake's team is being directly accused of exactly that behavior. Wayfair isn't just asking the judge to deny Blake's sanctions motion. They're asking him to recognize a pattern of misconduct. Let's talk about what happens next. Based on the evidence filed, the sanctions motion will almost certainly be denied. Blake's team never attempted to meet and confer with opposing counsel before filing. That alone is grounds for denial under court rules. They also failed to identify any material testimony they were actually prevented from exploring during the deposition. The transcript shows Miss Alexander answered every question except for a narrow set of topics protected by attorney-client privilege. There's no basis for sanctions, but the damage to Blake's credibility is already done. The court now has a complete record showing her legal team misrepresented what happened during a deposition, leaked false narratives to the media, and violated procedural rules designed to promote cooperation between parties. That's the kind of conduct that destroys a party's credibility with the judge. And credibility matters enormously in litigation. When a judge stops trusting you, every future motion you file gets scrutinized more carefully. Every representation you make gets questioned. You lose the benefit of the doubt. Blake started this fight 1 year ago with a carefully orchestrated media campaign. The New York Times story was designed to position her as a victim and Justin as an abuser. It worked initially. Public sentiment shifted in her favor. But legal cases aren't decided by public sentiment. They're decided by evidence. And as the evidence comes out through discovery, the narrative Blake's team constructed is falling apart piece by piece. Consider the trajectory. Blake claimed she was subjected to a hostile work environment, but depositions of other cast and crew members apparently didn't support that narrative. Blake claimed there was a coordinated smear campaign against her, but the expert analysis suggests negative sentiment was organic, driven by Blake's own public behavior during the film's press tour. Blake claimed Wayfair's attorneys were engaging in misconduct during depositions, but the full transcripts show her own attorneys were the ones violating norms. At every turn, when the actual evidence emerges, it contradicts the story Blake's team told the media. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. And courts recognize patterns. Judges aren't stupid. They can see when a party is using litigation as a vehicle for reputation management rather than seeking genuine legal relief. Here's the broader implication that extends far beyond this case. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are two of the most powerful people in Hollywood. They have resources, connections, and media relationships that most people can only imagine. If they wanted to quietly settle this case and move on with their careers, they could do that tomorrow. But they haven't. Instead, they've chosen to wage a public war using court filings as ammunition for media stories.
Why?
The answer is control. Blake's career isn't suffering because of this lawsuit. It's suffering because of how she behaved during the It Ends With Us press tour. Video evidence showed her being dismissive and hostile toward an interviewer who asked about domestic violence themes in the film. Her promotional strategy focused on her personal business ventures rather than the serious subject matter of the movie. The public responded negatively. That reaction was organic. It wasn't manufactured by a PR firm. It was earned, but acknowledging that would require accepting responsibility for her own choices. It would require admitting she made strategic errors during the press tour. Instead, Blake chose to file a lawsuit blaming everyone else for the negative response she received. She turned Justin Baldoni, the director and co-star of the film, into a villain. She accused his team of running a smear campaign, and she used the legal system to reshape the narrative in her favor.
For a while, it worked.
The initial media coverage was sympathetic to Blake, but litigation has a way of revealing truth. Discovery forces parties to produce documents, submit to depositions, and answer questions under oath. You can't control a narrative when you're under oath. And as the discovery process has unfolded, the evidence has consistently undermined Blake's version of events. The Hollywood Reporter's assessment that both Blake and Justin are among 2025's biggest losers might seem harsh, but it's accurate. Justin's career has stalled because of these allegations, even though the evidence increasingly suggests they're false. Blake's career has stalled because Hollywood now sees her as someone who weaponizes litigation and media to destroy anyone who crosses her. Neither outcome is good, but only one of them had the power to prevent this disaster. Blake could have handled the negative press tour response privately. She could have issued a statement taking responsibility for her promotional missteps. She could have moved on. Instead, she filed a lawsuit that has now exposed her legal team's misconduct and destroyed what remained of her credibility. Was this a legal fight, or was this always about reputation management? The evidence increasingly suggests it was the latter. And that creates a fascinating question. What happens when reputation management disguised as litigation starts to fail? Blake can't simply drop the lawsuit now without it looking like an admission that the case had no merit from the start. She's locked into a process that's generating more negative publicity with every filing. The very tool she tried to use to rehabilitate her image is now destroying it further. This may never reach a jury. Most cases settle before trial, but the settlement dynamics here are extraordinary. Justin has every incentive to take this case to trial because the evidence appears to support his position. Blake has every incentive to settle and make this go away quietly. But settling now, after a year of public warfare, would be seen as a defeat. So she's trapped by her own strategy. She can't win at trial based on the evidence we've seen. She can't settle without looking weak. And she can't drop the case without admitting it was meritless from the start. That's what mutually assured destruction actually looks like. Blake thought she could use the legal system as a weapon. Instead, it's become a trap. And the longer this continues, the more damage it does to everyone involved. Justin's reputation suffers from the mere fact of being accused. Blake's reputation suffers from the mounting evidence that her accusations are false. The cast and crew of It Ends With Us see their work overshadowed by scandal. Colleen Hoover sees her book associated with a Hollywood disaster. Nobody wins. But here's what makes this situation truly important beyond the celebrity gossip. It exposes how power actually operates in Hollywood. Blake and Ryan Reynolds have more wealth and influence than Justin Baldoni could ever hope to accumulate. They have relationships with major media outlets. They have PR teams that can place stories and shape coverage. They have attorneys who can file lawsuits and generate headlines. And they used all of that power to try to destroy someone whose only real offense was directing a movie that Blake decided to take control of during production. That's not justice. That's power protecting itself. And for a while, it worked. The initial media coverage was exactly what Blake wanted. But the legal system, for all its flaws, has mechanisms designed to surface truth. Discovery is one of those mechanisms. And what Discovery is revealing is that the person with more power isn't necessarily the person telling the truth. Think about how rare that is in Hollywood. Usually, the person with more power controls the narrative permanently. They have the resources to outlast any opposition. They can settle cases with NDAs that prevent the truth from emerging. They can use their media connections to bury unfavorable stories. But this case is different because Justin refused to quietly settle. He's fighting back with evidence. And that evidence is now part of the public record. The deposition transcript that just got filed isn't going away. Media outlets can now report on what actually happened during that deposition rather than relying on Blake's team's characterization of it. Legal analysts can review the transcript and form their own conclusions about who engaged in misconduct. The narrative Blake tried to construct is now subject to fact-checking in real time. And that's what happens when you weaponize litigation. Eventually, the evidence has to come out. We're watching a case study in how reputation management through litigation can backfire spectacularly. Blake thought she could use the courts to rehabilitate her image after the disastrous press tour. Instead, every court filing generates new negative coverage. Every deposition transcript that gets unsealed reveals more about her legal team's conduct. Every motion her attorneys file gets scrutinized, not just by the judge, but by the public. She turned litigation into a PR strategy, and now she can't control it. This case will likely be studied in law schools as an example of what not to do. You don't file a lawsuit primarily for media purposes. You don't use court filings to generate favorable headlines. You don't mischaracterize evidence and then get caught when the full record becomes public. And you definitely don't pick a fight with someone who has evidence that contradicts your narrative. All of those are strategic errors, and Blake's team has made every single one. Where does this go from here? The judge will deny Blake's sanctions motion. Wayfarer will continue to defend aggressively, filing the kind of detailed responses we just saw. More deposition transcripts will get unsealed, revealing more about what Blake's team has actually been doing. The case will proceed through discovery toward either settlement or trial. But the damage to Blake's reputation is already irreversible. Hollywood has made its judgment. The industry that once embraced her now sees her as a liability. And that matters far more than any legal outcome. A legal verdict might vindicate Justin and expose Blake's claims as false. But even if that happens, the stain of being accused never fully disappears. That's the real weapon Blake used when she filed this lawsuit. She knew that merely making accusations would damage Justin, regardless of whether they were true. She counted on the fact that people would remember the accusation even if it was later disproven. That's calculated. That's strategic. And that's exactly what makes this case so disturbing. But here's what Blake didn't count on. Her own legal team's misconduct would become the story. She didn't anticipate that her attorneys would get caught misrepresenting evidence and leaking false narratives to the media. She didn't expect that full deposition transcripts would get filed, allowing everyone to see what actually happened. She thought she could control the narrative from start to finish. And that miscalculation may end up being the most damaging mistake of all. The Hollywood Reporter was right to name Blake and Justin among 2025's biggest losers. But they're not losing equally. Justin is losing because he got caught up in someone else's reputation management scheme. Blake is losing because her scheme is being exposed in real time. One is a victim of circumstances. The other is the architect of her own destruction. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe to this channel. We're going to continue following this case as more evidence emerges. Drop a comment below with your thoughts. Do you think Blake will drop the lawsuit before it reaches trial? Do you think Justin will ultimately be vindicated? And what does this case reveal about how power and reputation actually work in Hollywood? Let me know your perspective, and I'll see you in the next video.